After the incredible year that Haute42 had in 2024, I often found myself wondering, what's next? What else could they possibly do to stay relevant and continue raising the bar in this rapidly developing niche? Their answer was not what I expected. They completely blew my expectations out of the water. Early images they shared for the prototype of their latest controller had me thinking it was just going to be a pie-in-the-sky concept. But as we know now, those mavericks at Haute42 actually pulled it off. Not being confined by the shackles of corporate bulk and bureaucracy of bigger companies, ideas and experimentation can be fast-tracked. This brand once labelled the budget option the alternative choice to copycats. They have created the most innovative, ambitious arcade stick to date. This is the Haute42 X Series. Hello friends and good gamers, welcome back to the channel. I just want to quickly thank Haute42 for sending this to me. I do get to keep the controller, but no instructions were given and all opinions are my own. So what's so innovative about Haute42's latest controller? It looks like most controllers I review on this channel, just another arcade stick without a stick, innit? Well, the three key sections of the X series are modular. That means we can change them to fine-tune it to preference. There are currently 8 modules available. You can get your base free depending on if you choose low profile or MX profile, and then an additional 5 that you can add on later. I've heard talk of the rumored stick module being cancelled, but I've got some good news for you. My contact at Haute42 said that it's still being worked on, but will take some time due to warehouse logistics. Who knows if they will ever get that sorted, but don't worry, if it does get released, I will let you know as soon as I do, and I'll cover future modules on this channel, so make sure to hit that subscribe button for updates if you haven't already. Let's talk about the left side first. For our directional cluster, we have a choice of low profile, MX profile and WOSAD. The low profile module has 23.5mm caps, and it's generously equipped with Haute42's wind engine switches. These switches feel great and sound lovely, one of my favorites in fact, so it's nice to see it as a stock installation. The MX profile module has 20.6mm rimmed caps with Kale's salty ice cream switches. These switches feel solid and have a nice thok to them, which is what I prefer. Be aware that this setup does sound quite loud, so fans of silent gaming will need to think about swapping these out. The WOSAD module is interesting. These also have the salty ice cream switches installed with ABS plastic keycaps. ABS keycaps are the most common type you can find on keyboards, and whilst I prefer PBT keycaps for typing, the ABS material is a good stock choice for a leverless controller because of the smooth finish. I find this module interesting because it turns the X series into a mix box. You can have the mix box with low profile action buttons, MX action buttons, and even chuck in a different jump module for some kind of ultimate Triforce setup. So this is quite significant, right? We're starting to see how versatile this controller is and the massive potential if Haute42 decides to expand the module options further. Finally, one really neat trick with the directional modules is the variable angle. By loosening the screws, we can choose the angle of approach from the left hand. Perfect. On the right side, the action buttons will either be low profile or MX profile. These match up with the features on the directional modules. So rims on the MX module and wind engine with 23mm keycaps on the low profile module. It uses a Vuelix layout that feels more comfortable than a noir layout to my hands, and spacing is about the same on both styles. For reference, this is the spacing of the Haute42 U series, which has the same spacing as the T and M+. And this is the spacing of the R series. Unlike the direction modules, it's not possible to adjust the angle of these buttons. I like how Haute42 addressed the RGB question with the X series. The lights are under the labeling instead of the switches, which is the common method. Having it under the switches means that the quality of light you get depends on which switch you use. With the X series, you can choose whichever switches you want based on sound and sensation preferences, while still getting the full effect of RGB that the controller has to offer. The effect isn't as big as having it around the buttons, but I find this to be more useful. I still get confused when navigating the menus in Street Fighter 6, so to see the button labeling at a glance in any lighting condition is a quality of life improvement for me. I do wish that they could have found a way to have this RGB labeling on the direction and jump modules too, just for a uniform presentation. If the rumored lever module ever gets released, it would be very cool if they could implement directional labeling that lights up when activated. For the bottom cluster, we again have the choice between MX and low profile. The RS button is positioned just like the M Ultra model, which I think is a great choice. It's in a perfect spot for the thumb and has a surprising amount of clearance. I've never hit this by accident on my M Ultra. For fighting games that require analog sticks, you're covered here too. Now, I don't play any fighting games that use analog sticks during combat, so I can't say how well these work with those kinds of games. You'll probably know better than I will if you play Sparking Zero, for example. But what I can tell you is that these are Hall effect sticks. Hall effect technology uses internal magnets to determine stick positioning, and it's highly regarded for its anti-stick drift properties. They have less resistance than the potentiometer sticks we find on official control pads, and whether that's a good or bad thing is up to your preference. This module comes with its own set of instructions because they require setting up in the web config to start working, so don't throw this card away. It also comes with some risers, so if the sticks sit too low for you, just wrap these on top to turn them into mushroom tips. Alright, so that's the big flagship feature in a nutshell. We've seen modularity on fight pads before, but to have it on a stick with all its possibilities is unprecedented. But the X Series is Haute42's most expensive controller to date, so it must have some additional bells and whistles, right? Well, yes it does. The function row is spread out along the top with springy, clicky buttons. These feel completely different to the function buttons they usually opt for. They sit in their pockets properly so they feel solid, but they are connected by a bridge, so when you push one, you'll see the other ones move slightly. They're still very effective, but it is a bit jarring on my OCD. My hope is that the plastic will eventually loosen and this will go away. Otherwise, like I said, they work fine and I still think they're better than most of their previous solutions for function buttons. There's a tournament lock on the top corner and an OLED screen. You can use this screen for information, troubleshooting, or customize it with an image. This whole function row looks super legit behind its gloss panel, and it's a massive step up compared to their other models and controllers by other brands. There are two USB-C ports for the braided cable. The one that exits north is collapsed, and this should help to mitigate damage to the port if the cable is nudged. There is one EXT port for authentication dongles if you want to use this on your PS5 or Series X. I recommend the Booter 5 for PS5 because of its small footprint. Just plug this in, hold the triangle button when first booting up the controller, and you'll be ready for PS5 fighting games. Around the back there's a gorgeous, full-sized TPU non-slip map. A fun detail here is the shaded in logos on all four corners to replace the 4 rubber pads that would usually be here. And finally, I've been excited to show you this next feature, and I've already shown you some really cool, groundbreaking stuff, so you know this next thing is going to be special to me. That's right boys, and that one girl out there, this is the carry case final boss. It feels exactly like you'd expect, soft to touch but hard in all the right places. And it's not just a generic carry case with a logo printed on it. We've got embossing on this mofo, so you can rep Haute42 in your local scene and do it in style. Now look at this framing here on the top of the case. This isn't just to add depth and extra pop to the logo, it's the perfect size for our controller to slot into, so you don't even have to leave this sitting in the corner like a basic backpack. This baby stays right on your lap, where it belongs, whilst you run your set. And that's quite cool so far, right? Looks good, feels good, has an Easter egg feature. Anything else? Yes. Take a look at this. Pockets for your optional modules. And you're not going to leave these pockets empty now, are you? Well played, Haute42. Well played. Now let's compose ourselves a bit and put that to the side. I want to talk about the build because it's certainly worth talking about. The chassis is made with aluminium. This is my favorite material for arcade sticks because it's weighty, it's robust, and feels premium. I thought the screws on the face would bother me, but they look cool in person. They have a rainbow effect on them and interact with light in a fun way. They're like mini vinyl records. All the corners have a generous curve and all edges are chamfered. I usually prefer a chamfer that goes in deeper or even a full slope, but the one here does serve its purpose of taking the sharpness away from the edges. And not having a big chamfer gives the shape a fun retro vibe. It reminds me of the Doyle hit pads, which is a good thing. There's an ambient light strip along the bottom and it does a good job of lighting up a surface. It's potent but not overly distracting. The aesthetics aren't just skin deep though. You might have spotted the thoughtfully designed PCB in some of my other shots. The shapes and lines are reminiscent of radar and control panels from a 1970s sci-fi movie, like what you'd see inside the cockpit of a spaceship. It's a coherent design vision when considered with the retro curves of the body I mentioned earlier. Haute42 didn't have to go the extra mile with this, but it adds a nice touch to the process of switching out your modules. It's functional and good looking, and shows how much effort and intention went into the controller. They want you to enjoy every part of what you paid for. The X Series runs on a powerful GB2040 software, so it has all the relevant features under the hood. It has SLCD modes to comply with tournament regulations. You can map the pins to your liking, you can customize the OLED screen, the RGB, and add profile settings, which is quite useful for a chameleon controller like this. I don't think art modding is necessary for the X series, but if you are going down that route, you'd have to stick something on top. OMG It's Dose had a great idea for his Stealth Akuma mod with a printed vinyl and black rims from his U16. I'll leave a link to his socials below. I think his mod looks fantastic, so I ordered a vinyl cut of Cammy from him for my build. Nah, just kidding. I didn't make any mistakes with the application on this controller, and that's a first for me. If you're not careful, applying stickers can get really bad. Close your eyes now if you don't want to see what I did to my M+.
Look how they mess with my boy.
I won't be swapping out my rims, but I do want to try my Gateron ink blacks on this because I want the controller to be quieter, whilst keeping the thock and adding some creaminess to the sound. I love these on my mechanical keyboard and I'm hoping it will pair well with this controller. For the keycaps, you can source any 20.6mm caps or 25.8mm caps for the jump button. With the low profile module, any Choc V2 switches should be fine. I highly recommend Haute42's shadow hunting switches if you want to try something different because they feel and sound great and have a shorter travel distance. Haute42 doesn't have any 23.5mm caps for sale just yet. You'd have to experiment with the caps from an M Lite or P12 Pro if you have those. The WASAD module should take any standard keyboard keycaps. I'm going to put on some double shot PBT keycaps by Osume and try it with the Gateron ink black switches as well. Unscrewing is super easy with the included screwdriver, so top marks to Haute42 for bundling in the exact tool we need, but removing them can be tricky. I wish a tool was included for this as well. For now, I've been prying them up by the button caps. As usual, the included switch puller is shockingly bad. Removing keycaps requires anything flat, or you can invest in one of these cheap keycap removers. Slide the corner in, hook the cap and pull. Be gentle. So I've been using the X series for a few days now and I've got a feel for what I like and dislike about it. First of all, the buttery soft finish on the keycaps is very good. They somehow feel smooth and slightly grippy at the same time with a warm sensation on the fingers. They require regular wiping even for my dry hands, so sweaty boys might have to do this more often. I think the adjustable angle on the left module is genius. I was able to get mine at the perfect angle, and making this adjustment was very quick. I'm not keen on the position of the jump button. I don't mind the spacing of the direction and action buttons, but the jump button demands that I keep my hand open all the time. Ideally, I would prefer if the jump button was around here. The general spacing would make this ideal as a split layout if Haute42 releases a bottom module with just two large jump buttons on either end, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. If you're going to play games that require a WASAD layout, the dedicated module is worth the investment because the spacing is more comfortable, especially for fast twitch games like shmups. Stretching for the up button on the arcade style modules wasn't as comfortable or snappy. The sticks on the analog module are quite scratchy, so they're not ideal for your primary method of movement in, like, say, a 3D action game. Again, I'm not experienced in fighting games that use analog sticks, but they seem fine for occasional controls or camera angles. Going back from the analog module to jump modules will require you to undo the settings, so you should either take a screenshot of the default settings or reset the controller. Only invest in this module if you know you need it. Finally, the quality of life stuff is excellent. The TPU base is very comfortable and warms up quickly, so you don't have that cold shock when laying this on your bare thighs. Splitting the function buttons into two clusters makes it easy to remember where everything is. It's especially nice to have the touchpad button up here for the left hand, because it feels natural for me to reach for it in training mode. Overall, it's not my favorite controller to play fighting games with. The M Ultra still holds that spot for me, but the modularity is useful and the controller is as versatile as it promises to be. For this comparison, I have the M Ultra and the Varmilo FK2. You can find full-length videos for both of these controllers on my channel, so check out the link for those at the end of this video. The M Ultra uses low-profile switches only, and like the X, it has an aluminium build and ambient light strip. The light strip is around the side on this model, whilst on the X, it's on the bottom. It has a slightly smaller footprint with a deeper chamfer on the chin, and an RGB light switch that is missing from the X. This turns off all the lights on the controller. Spacing is almost identical to the Haute42 S16, which is perfect for my hands. The spacing on the X is currently better suited to larger hands. If the X series didn't exist, this would be Haute42's most premium built controller. I think it's fantastic and it's up there with my favorites. Installing shadow hunting switches bumps this up from A tier to S tier. If you know you're only interested in low profile switches and you're going for a relaxed spacing, then I would recommend choosing an M Ultra above anything else on the market. The Varmilo FK2 uses MX profile switches only, but these ones are a new breed of technology. Remember the Hall effect sticks I mentioned earlier? The switches in this are similar. It uses internal magnets to detect button presses, and the tech is so new that there are currently no alternatives for modding, so you have to like the feel and sound of speed silvers for now. It's made with thick injection molded plastic and I find it aesthetically pleasing in a quirky way. There isn't an EXT port on the body, so if you want to play on a PS5 or Series X, you have to purchase a dongle by Brook, which goes directly into the console. The FK2 comes with an excellent carry case bundled in and has the slotting feature I mentioned on the X model. If you like MX switches and want your controller big and beautiful, this is a good choice. The X series is a revolutionary controller. We've seen modularity on other controllers before, but not to this scale. Not to this availability and this price. Let's talk about that price for a bit, because I did mention this is Haute42's most expensive controller to date. It costs £160 on AliExpress, which is about $200. Compared to their previous controllers, it's no longer considered budget, but that's because the lower end of their price spectrum is just £40. But if you compare this to the market as a whole, including every brand out there, it's still within the mid-range because the more expensive ones retail for £100 more. For that money, you get Haute42's most premium product. The controller, features and overall package are excellent. Adding the modules will cost £20 to £50 a pop, and getting a few of those will match the price with a Kitsune or Victrix. But when that price is matched, you end up with multiple controllers in one with the X series. If the modularity is something that you end up using for different styles of games, you do save money and space in the long run. I know I'm going to see this question a lot, so let's address this right now. Which suite should you start with? I recommend going for the low profile version first to get an instantly good experience. Then build from there if you're curious about MX switches and if you're curious about mixing in the WASD module and analog module. So who is this good for? The controller is good for someone who doesn't have a leverless and isn't sure what they like or dislike. This gives enough of a taste to get a base level of preference whilst future-proofing with the option of changing things up. And it's also good for someone who knows they will play a variety of games and want every experience of those games to feel consistent. There are a lot of things to like about the X series, but as I mentioned in my impressions section, I do find the spacing isn't ideal with the modules that are currently available. Let me know how you're getting on with the spacing in the comments if you have this controller already. Also, the X series isn't for you if you already have a leverless you love and aren't interested in the versatility of this product. For example, someone who loves the spacing and feel of low profile buttons on the M Ultra might see that as their endgame, so why spend more money? If your answer to that last question is for the collection, I don't blame you. I think plenty of gamers out there would love to have this in their collection. The X series is an excellent product overall. The concept and potential of this controller are like nothing we've seen before, or possibly ever. I can't imagine Razer, Victrix or Hori having the stones to attempt something like this. It already stands out in a rapidly growing market, and as long as Haute42 continues to support the X series with interesting new modules, this could be the first and last controller you will ever need. Until they release a chroma blue colorway, of course. Who can say no to that? Thanks for joining me for today's video. If you want the links for anything you've seen today, just check the description box below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this, and if you want to see my review for one of the best leverless controllers I've ever tried, click on this video and I'll see you there.